Howdy, my name is Andres, and for today, I'll be your guide, teaching you fine and hopefully wonderful strangers about the interesting things that I'm bringing within my comm class. All of this will be presented by my little avatar here, and to put it simply, I have no webcam, so hopefully you can deal with the quality for now. This will be called Comm and Talk, where I just talk to you guys about something I learned in the readings for my comm class, and hopefully do it in a very entertaining manner. Probably not, but we'll see how it goes. Now, before we get started, I'm just going to tell you guys a little story. It'll make sense as we go along, so just relax and listen along. It's one woven in fantasy, and as all fantasy fairy tales go, once upon a time, in the kingdom of SET, Symbolica Convergencia Theoria, there lived an odd bunch of strangers within the same street. To explain, this neighborhood had a noble, a baker, a jeweler, and a shut-in. They all essentially lived in drastically different worlds, and aren't really the type you'd think would mingle together with. So now it just so happens that the ruler of the kingdom is going to celebrate their birthday in a few months. And for the first time in this kingdom, a royal decree is issued out that all neighborhoods must work together to make them a gift. Thanks to this, the four suddenly found themselves meeting with each other for the first time, and they're all pretty confused on what to do. After all, no one actually knew what the ruler liked or was anticipating. So in coming to terms with the actions they gotta do, they all talked amongst themselves over what the ruler liked, sharing their stories and experiences of other royal decrees, and just the rule overall. It was at this point that they realized a massive issue, and that the ruler was a complete shut-in, and so they barely knew anything about him as well. So from this joke and realization, they realized that the shut-in could also be the ruler, so a little inside joke started there about that, as they regularly called them Their Highness. But throughout the months, they brainstormed and worked tirelessly, having gained, a solid trust and respect for one another. They finally collaborated, very perfectly and created a gift that contained a trait from each of them. The baker was able to create the most delicious cake, the jeweler, their most magnificent ring, and the noble, the most beautiful rose they've grown. As for the shut-in, thanks to their newfound friends, they were able to, finally gain confidence and finally sing and create a song, one that they write for the ruler for themselves. So through this collaboration, each of these individuals, once strangers, was able to create what they never could have imagined. And so when the ruler's birthday came, they were all praised for having the greatest gifts of all the neighborhoods. And thus, even after the incident, they all remained close with one another and they lived happily ever after. The end. So, what was the point of that story? Why did I spend the intro telling you all this? Well, this story is meant to help demonstrate today's topic in action. What is it? Well, today's topic is about symbolic convergence theory, a term that Ernest G. Borman helped coin. Within Borman's article, The Symbolic Convergence Theory of Communication, Applications and Implications for Teachers and Consultants, long name, I know, he describes that symbolic convergence theory helps explain how it is that people sympathize, empathize, and identify with one another. This itself is further expanded upon by Borman on page 51, who also describes symbolic convergence theory, which I'll refer to as SCT from now on, as a way for people to achieve an empathetic communion alongside a meeting of minds. All of this comes about primarily thanks to our human desire to explain and understand the world around us, both the blessing and curse that language gave us. So, how does this all work? Well, this all works through the dynamic process of sharing group fantasies. Now, I will say that while a lot of this article does provide seemingly confusing explanations and examples, it's actually all somewhat simple to grasp. Another reason why I told you all that story in the beginning is I believe it'll make it easier to understand as I explain. So, what is the dynamic process of sharing group fantasies? Well, first, let me explain to you all a very important distinction with what is meant by the word fantasy. Well, I did have my little fun, with my fantasy story. That type of fantasy, that is just fiction, isn't at all what Borman means. Instead, fantasy, as Borman presents on page 52, is the way that communities of people create their social reality. In simpler terms, it's how we maybe describe and interpret events in our lives to the point that they may seemingly be like fantasy. To elaborate, think about a bad day or a great day we had at a job, or just life in general. The interpretation we present to others reflects what we present in fantasy stories. There's a protagonist, us, a hero's journey, and an ending, whether it be good or bad. Each interpretation is different every time we tell it to a person, and that's what makes it, unique and more like a fantasy story. So now that we have a better grasp of fantasy within the SET context, how does this all play out? Well, there are key things that occur that lead to this meeting of minds. Fantasy themes help show the group a common experience and shape it into a social knowledge, and come about from fantasy chains, which are connected stories shared that relate to one another. Looking at our story, the protagonists of our story all share fantasies with one another, that is, their past experiences with other royal decrees, all of which to help them brainstorm what they will present the ruler. This can be defined as the fantasy chain. By sharing their individual fantasies, these stories become the foundations to bond the group together, and these retold stories become the fantasy themes by which help them create social knowledge to aid them in their goal. If done successfully and symbolic convergence occurred, Bourne presents the idea that the group will exhibit inside joke syndrome. It's nothing complicated, it's exactly what it sounds like. Simply put, the group gains an inside joke that only they will understand and helps keep their bond together. In the case of our wonderful neighbors above, through their shared fantasy themes, they eventually started calling the shut-in their highness. Anyone outside of their neighborhood would believe that they were referring to the ruler, when in reality, they were referring to the shut-in. And it's all because of that remembrance of the moment they drew a small connection between them and the ruler. This pivotal creation of inside jokes in the group then leads into fantasy types, where similar fantasies are retold over and over, sometimes in new context, helping reinforce the knowledge and experiences that the group had with one another. With enough of these fantasy types, the group will be able to enter a rhetorical vision, in which their values will be reflected within the group. In this instance, our neighbor's rhetorical vision is one of supporting one another, which led to the gifts that the group was able to present to the ruler and their overall happiness and happy ending. Thus, symbolic convergence works in this manner, being able to demonstrate how a group functions how it does, but not at all how to control that group. With this understanding, let's talk about something important regarding SAT, more specifically some drawbacks about it, and later on how it relates to our lives, and more so how beneficial it could be. So yeah, let's talk about it, shall we? If there's one thing I think Boardman doesn't really do in the article, it's really discuss the problems or issues that the symbolic convergence theory kind of glosses over and can create. I mean, for example, the symbolic SCT uses really positive wording, like empathetic communion and meeting of minds, in which case, as James Oliphant puts it, a prosocial bias that ignores the more negative aspects of SCT. As he writes on page 460 of his article, Rousing and Redirecting a Sleeping Giant, the individual's sharing of consciousness and meanings is seen as a warranted concurrence. This becomes problematic when looking at, more dangerous ideologies that form from convergence, for example, in the case of racist or xenophobic groups. In that case, I feel like the positive wording used in SCT should be re-examined when looking at such groups, as it could lead to some serious issues. Another big problem is the assumption that everyone in that group share and converse equally with one another, taking an egalitarian assumption as Oliphant puts it. In this instance, under a group that has a leader with better social and talking skills than the rest of the members, that leader could actually be taking advantage and just receiving benefits that the others don't. SCT fails to really address this because, again, it assumes that everyone within the group is equal and that there's no foul play going on. As Oliphant presents on page 461, visions which appear conflict-free and unified at the surface may obscure more fundamental ideological conflicts, privileging a certain ideology over others. This failure to realize such power dynamics can lead to a misrepresentation of a group. For example, taking our story, assuming the noble was more malicious, then through his position of power, he could have forced the others to just, give him what he wants, or forced him to think about things that he does. Essentially, getting benefits that the others wouldn't have. So ultimately, I just feel like these challenges are something worth noting, and I feel like it's something we should definitely learn about when it comes to SCT, as it could really lead to a different outlook on the groups that we make. But I feel like despite these negative aspects, it's still important to note just how important SCT is, and just how applicable it can be within our lives. Assuming our friend groups and other relationships are stable, and that there is no hidden negativity or conflict, I feel like SCT becomes something very practical, as it can lead to a better understanding of the relationships I have with my friends and other loved ones. It gives me a better grasp of how I can form better groups, as I will be doing this for this class. It's part of the class name, for crying out loud. As Bourne puts it on page 55, in addition to helping groups work out their internal problems, SCT provides a perspective for the analysis of communication difficulties between or among groups and communities. So I feel like despite the differences in rhetorical visions or ideas, it's just SCT allows for coalescence and understanding, and it's something that will be very helpful for me in the future as well. When I have problems or issues with my group members, I feel like it's just something that's going to be very applicable no matter what, and really just help me understand them better. So yeah, with this I just feel better equipped to talk and communicate with my peers, and I feel like this is probably going to be the end of the episode. I have one more thing I want to end with real fast. It's just a question that I kind of just thought about, seeing how this article was written in the 1980s. So seeing how social media kind of became this whole thing, and COVID was a thing as well, I'm just kind of wondering if these things had impacts on SCT that Borman possibly couldn't have realized beforehand. Like, for example, if there's a purely digital group, is that any different from a more physical one, or is there any difference at all? For the most part, that's kind of like the only question I really want to leave you guys out there with, and I'm kind of curious to see your thoughts and answers, so leave them in the comments below, gotta show that out. But yeah, this is a good ending to end my first YouTube video with, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed me talking about SCT, and I'll be sure to catch you guys later then. I hope you guys had a wonderful day. Thank you for watching this Comm talk, and hopefully I made it more enjoyable for you guys. Next time, there'll be better quality, I hope. I'll try my best, and I'll catch you guys next time. So, see you guys, take care, and hasta la vista.